This is day 35 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There are developments, there are peace talks, but there's also the fact that Russia is not where it thought it would be, not remotely close at this point in the war. And there's new U.S. intelligence that says Vladimir Putin may have gotten to this point because he didn't know where he was even 35 days ago, that he's been misled by his own top aides. They also say Putin misleads, that he is lied to and a liar, because he said Russian forces would pull back while it actually intensifies the Capitol bombing. Here's a suburb outside the Capitol where you see the wreckage. Here's another northern city where Russia also claimed it was going to pull back in those peace talks I mentioned, but there's been more bombing. You're looking at what was once a market, now completely basically destroyed and unusable. Ukrainian forces assessing the damage in some of the towns they've been able to retake, sifting through rubble, recovering bodies, an 11-year-old girl discussing her neighborhood bombed.
Злякався?
Да, злякався.
І що далі було?
Ну, я був весь в крові. Усі були в крові.
This is part of the reality against a period where Russia said it was going to partially pull back. You have world leaders and Ukrainian refugees all saying, well, they already know Vladimir Putin, so nothing about this development is surprising.
They're talking about, trying to set the conditions for decreasing military tensions. But I think it's way too soon to feel any confidence in that.
Верить вообще представителям российским, наверное, все-таки не стоит. И мне кажется, будет какая-то эскалация на Востоке. Поэтому мы сейчас и не возвращаемся в Харьков. Потому что опасаемся, что начнется что-то активная фаза войны.
I would say we have no reason to trust Russia, to trust Lavrov, to trust Putin.
The condition number one, please. Don't trust Putin.
That's the view of the actions by Putin against this military context. But how did Putin get into this place? Well, U.S. intelligence has a report now that says they have information and intelligence that suggests he continues to be misinformed about the invasion by, quote, yes men. Reuters and others have covered that story. You see the headline about yes men. And you have this tension between Putin and his own military leaders. So you have top U.S. officials in the Biden administration breaking it down like this.
One of the Achilles heels of autocracies is that you don't have people in those systems who speak truth to power.
His senior advisors are too afraid to tell him the truth.
I'm now joined by someone who's been exactly such a senior advisor to a Russian president. Andrei Kozyrov was the Russian foreign minister. He worked under Boris Yeltsin, and his deputy, Sergei Lavrov, has assumed that position for Putin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, there's no great intellectual victory laps during this kind of grim war and humanitarian crisis. And yet, for the sake of making sense of what's happening, which is what we endeavor to do here, here on day 35, I'm quoting U.S. intelligence about, quote, yes men, and what American officials are publicly saying about Putin. You did diagnose this very information chain problem on the beat. You referred to the, quote, yes men around Putin, and you explained to us then why Putin would sooner be overthrown than get bad news. Let's just take a quick look at that. Is there anyone inside the Russian government who can even give him the bad news?
That is less possible than overthrow him. That's a Russian tradition. They fear to tell the boss the truth, but one day they might come with a weapon and escort him either to the grave or to retirement.
A few weeks later, how is that playing out? And as a foreign policy leader, why do you think that the United States is not only finding this, whatever their intelligence is, it's drawn the way yours is on experience, but making this part of their public presentation now today?
Well, they probably have intelligence, and I just had a knowledge of tradition and a little bit of insight in what happens in Kremlin. In my time, when I was foreign minister, it was difficult to report unwelcome news to my boss, President Yeltsin, but at least it was possible occasionally. And he would listen. He would never change immediately his mind, but later on he would call me on direct line and say something like, oh, okay, you do it your way. So he was amendable. This guy, I just want to be very clear that, yes, he could have been deceived, misinformed by his entourage, but the policy, this bandit type policy is his. That's what important to remember, that they deceived him on some facts. And the whole situation reminds me that fable, about a sycophantic fox and gullible crow. When a sycophantic fox persuaded the crow to sing and was after the piece of cheese. So those guys around him, they are mostly crooks. They are after the cheese. They are after the money. So they wanted him to authorize funding for the military, for the operation, even for everything, for killing, for bombing. But they wanted to steal, and they did a lot, because you can see how badly a Russian army is doing, in fact. And they were telling him what he wanted to hear, and he kind of stupidly opened the big and the cheese, and they stole the cheese, and he is now in a ridiculous position. But again, it does not relieve him from the crime which he authorized and which he pursues.
Yeah, and I don't know the crow cheese story as well, although it rings a bell. And we know what it is for people to go after the cheese or the money. And as you say, they're pilfering. So they have a different incentive structure if it's a kleptocracy and there's so much pinching and stealing going on. The other follow-up to this is, if this is known, as you say, Russian tradition, and Putin is KGB inexperienced, and now this story's kicking around. It's in the wire services, it's on television. I don't know how they track you, but some people over there know you, and you said it then, and now U.S. intelligence says it. At what point does Putin hear about all this and have an incentive to improve his incoming information? Does that ever happen?
That may be, yes, that may be, but he will do it very, very kind of surreptitiously, because otherwise he will be exposed even more like this crow fool, who believed the foxes around him. So he will do it very calmly, but maybe very ruthlessly too. And that happens. Yes, that's also in Russian tradition, but it's not a bad news for us, because, that means that the kingdom will be against itself inside. And as was said, this kingdom cannot stand. So that's a good news. Yeah, that's
really fascinating. You know of what you speak, which is why we keep coming back to you. And like U.S. intelligence, you have to talk to people who've been there to even get an understanding of this, as we're in this tough spot. Andrei Kozyrov, thank you so much, sir.